You cannot solve the problem of global warming with the same tools and mindset which has created the global warming. We have to shift our attitude of ownership of nature to relationship with nature. We are in relationship with the trees and the mountains and the rivers and the animals and the sky. The moment you change from ownership to relationship, you create a sense of the sacred.
Welcome to Sacred Land Speaks, where we dive into the audio archives of the Sacred Land Film Project and revisit the interview clips we left on the cutting room floor over 40 years of filmmaking. I'm your host, Toby McLeod. Today we bring you my 2007 interview with the pacifist pilgrim, former monk, and longtime editor of Resurgence magazine, Satish Kumar. As we were working on our 4-part film series, Standing on Sacred Ground, we needed a way to connect the 8 different indigenous communities we'd filmed with over 4 years, to link the stories of their common struggles to protect sacred places. So we decided to interview 4 people who we affectionately called our big thinkers, who could deepen our stories and paint a bigger picture. Born in India in 1936, Satish Kumar joined a Jain monastery when he was 9 years old. Mahatma Ghandi was assassinated when he was 11, and at 18 the young monk left the monastery to become a student of one of Gandhi's disciples. In 1962, at the age of 25, Satish made a 2-year anti-nuclear pilgrimage, walking to the capital cities of the 4 nations with nuclear weapons, Moscow, Paris, London, and Washington, D.C. Satish moved to England in 1973, where he eventually became the London-based editor of Resurgence magazine. He had a way of articulating both the issues and the solutions that were essential to our films. I started by asking him a question I asked all the big thinkers. How would you define a sacred place?
In every culture, people have found symbolic sacred places where they can recognize the magnanimity, beauty, the enormity of the universe coming together as a focus. In the Hindu tradition, we have a mantra, Isha Vashyamidam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat, which means that everything upon this earth, a blade of grass, a leaf on the tree, a worm under the soil, a butterfly, a bee, a flower, a thorn, everything upon this earth are home of divine. Earth is sacred, sun is sacred, moon is sacred, trees are sacred, rivers are sacred. This is the big picture, what I call the ultimate picture. The ultimate meaning of the sacred is the whole of the earth is sacred. Life is sacred. But it's a too big a picture. How do you grasp this ultimate sacredness? Therefore, we have to come to an intimate picture. We have to symbolize the sacred life which we have upon this earth. In order to symbolize that sacredness, we say the holy river Ganges. And particularly the source of Ganges is sacred. So we recognize a place, Mount Kailash in Tibet, holy river Ganges in India, or a stone circle like Stonehenge in England. So all these places are symbols. Therefore, the intimate place is so important for us. We have to recognize the magnetic value of a particular spot. And by recognizing this, we can relate to the rest. That does not mean that by making one place sacred, we are saying other places are not sacred, they are profane. No, all other places are sacred. By going to sacred sites and sacred places, I realize the divinity here upon the earth. Divinity here in the river, in the mountains, in the trees, in the animals. You have a longing for the universal sacredness, and you have a belonging to a particular space, longing for God, longing for enlightenment, longing for divinity. But longing is abstract. Longing is too big. So you have to bring your longing with belonging to your beloved. And so you belong to a place, you belong to a community, and that sense of belonging is particular. This is my understanding of the sacred place.
I loved how Satish framed the particularity of sacred sites within the context of the entire world being sacred, the home of the divine. And he went on to point out the danger of trying to protect any one specific sacred site without remembering this larger context.
Many ecologically minded people are being attracted towards recognizing some places as sacred. And even governments and environmental organizations such as Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, WWF, these national and international organizations are encouraging people to recognize certain sites as sites of special interest or sites of special beauty or sites of special UN importance. There is a danger in that approach, and there's a risk in that approach. And that danger and risk is that you say, we will protect this site, and the rest of the site we can spoil. We can put genetically engineered monocrops. We can put landfills. We can put fertilizers, chemicals, pesticide, herbicide. We can do what we like. We can create the rest of the place as our source of industrial growth or economic growth. So here we have to be cautious. We have to be careful. One place is a sacred place. That does not mean the rest of the places are not sacred. Earth is sacred. And within the context of the sacredness of the earth, if you recognize a particular place as a symbol of the sacred, then it's okay. But at the same time, we have to insist that we have to treat the entire earth as sacred. That's the context. A particular sacred site can only retain its sacredness within the context of the sacredness of the earth. Then we can receive our economic and social benefit from the earth as a gift with gratitude. So it does not mean that you are not allowed to do farming, or you are not allowed to do gardening, or you are not allowed to build houses. But your farming, your gardening, your building houses, all your activities will be in harmony with the natural process, and not an imposition and a destruction and a pollution of natural habitat. You receive the gifts of the earth like you receive gifts from your mother. A baby receives milk from mother's breasts, and baby is implicitly grateful and thankful to the mother. In the same way, we treat the earth as our mother, as a sacred site, whole earth. And then earth gives bountiful, abundance gifts of the earth we receive with gratitude. And that way, our human well-being and well-being of the earth are in harmony. At the moment, the human well-being and the well-being of the earth is in contradiction, in conflict. There is no harmony. What I am speaking about, and my worldview of a sacred earth, is that humanity relearns to live in harmony with the sacred earth. Not as rulers of the earth, not as managers of the earth, not as lords of the earth, not as in charge of the earth, managing all the natural resources, but living in harmony with the earth.
One way Satish Kumar lives in harmony with the earth, building and maintaining his relationship with sacred places, is through pilgrimage.
When you make a pilgrimage, you walk, and you walk bare feet. So when you are walking, touching the sacred earth all the way, so you are reaching the intimate spot of the sacredness, but you are walking the sacred earth at the same time. I went on a pilgrimage to Mount Kailash in Tibet. Now, Mount Kailash is the symbol of a sacred site. Sacred site is because gods live on the top of the hill, because that's a very peaceful place. There are no distractions, no worldly attractions, no consumerism there, no shops there, no shopping malls there. So you are leaving the world behind you to reach a place of total calm and total peace. That you have the ultimate sacredness, but ultimate sacredness is too big. Therefore, you have to approach the ultimate through the intimate. We are microcosm of macrocosm. So our bodies are sacred, and through this body, we experience the universe. Everything in the universe is in our body. The universe is made of earth, air, fire, water, space, time, consciousness, spirit, intelligence, creativity, imagination. All these visible and invisible qualities of the universe are embodied in our bodies. So the self of the body is the intimate and the universe is the ultimate. So for me, the sacredness of the universe has to be symbolized by the sacredness of the place. A particularity and universality are two sides of the same coin. So one tree, one sacred stone circle, one great mound can be a magnetic pole to which pilgrims come year after year after year. For centuries, pilgrims come and leave their sacred vibes. So every speck of dust becomes sacred, because when you are coming with that motivation, that sacred feeling, and all your fear, all your attachment are dropped away. When you go to a particular spot of river Ganges and you take a bath, you take a dip into that sacred river, and you close your eyes, and you close your nostrils, and you close your mouth, and you close your ears, and you close your mind, thinking mind. And at that moment, all your attachments, all your fears, all your greed, all your ego drops away. That is the beauty of creating sacred spaces, when you are able to go to that place. So I believe that over the centuries, when pilgrims have made those pilgrims' way and a pilgrim's path and pilgrimages, then they become cathedrals, nature's cathedrals. So for me, Mount Kailash in Tibet is nature's cathedral. For me, my temple is River Ganges, and I go there and take a dip in that sacred water, and I threw the ashes of my father's body when he died and when he was cremated. So his ashes I and my mother took to River Ganges, and by spreading those ashes into the river, I believe that intimate body of my father I have now spread to go to the ultimate, to the universe. And the river Ganges will take his ashes back into the ocean, and then those ashes will rise with the steam and go into the clouds, and those ashes will be part of, in a very minute form, like homeopathic form, those ashes will be in the rain, and that rain will go all over the world and drop back onto the soil. So that sense of the sacred of the river, of intimate body and the intimate ashes being flown and thrown and floated into the river, become part of the universe.
I asked Satish to share some of the practices and lessons he learned on his barefoot journeys to sacred places.
I made a pilgrimage to holy, sacred site of Iona in Scotland. I made a pilgrimage to Stonehenge and Glastonbury. And all these pilgrimages have made me realize that God is not out somewhere away, out of this world, in the sky, controlling the world. Nature is my God. Earth is my goddess. These holy, sacred mountains and rivers, they become my temples. They become my cathedrals. They become my prayer. I go to Dartmoor in England, which is a sacred wild site, and I meditate there. And I find my peace and my solace and my self-realization. So by going to sacred sites and sacred places, I realize the divinity and the grandeur of God. And God here upon the earth. Divinity here in the river, in the mountains, in the trees, in the animals. So my worldview has changed by making these pilgrimages. Our minds get conditioned by constant flow of television, computers, internet, advertising, shopping malls. Our minds are conditioned by this materialistic, narrow, ego-centered worldview. When you go out in nature, and when you are one with nature, you feel the presence of divine. I feel. So when I go on a pilgrimage to Mount Kailash, which I did in Tibet, or Santiago de Compostela, which I did in Spain, or Glastonbury in England, which I did, or Iona in Scotland, which I did, I find the presence of divine in every blade of grass. The way I started this interview by saying, Isha Vashyam Idam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat. I recognize by making pilgrimage, I recognize by touching the earth, the divine is here, present. And my meditation becomes every moment. My meditation and prayer is every step. And when I'm walking on the earth, I feel the warmth and the generosity and the kindness of the earth. The earth is holding me in her lap and giving me life, inspiration, spirituality. Spirituality for me is not in books or some religious traditions. For me, spirituality is in every blade of grass. And by making pilgrimage, I come face to face with that reality. When you are stuck in your car in traffic jam on a motorway or highway, when you are stuck in front of a computer screen or a television screen, you lose that sense of oneness, the sense of belonging, the sense of the sacred. But when you are making a pilgrimage to a sacred site, you reconnect your lost sense of the sacred.
As a deep historical thinker, Satish Kumar offered a clear view of the origins of the environmental crisis we face today.
The human egocentric worldview that all nature there is for the benefit of human beings has many different roots. One root we find in Genesis, where it is said that human beings have dominion over the earth, and we have responsibility and duty to subdue the earth and multiply our numbers. And we have been doing very good job of that. We are now 6 billion people or more upon this earth. So this idea that we have a dominion over the earth takes us away from our interdependent relationship with the earth. Rather than thinking that we depend on the gifts of the earth and gifts of gods, and the place is a sacred place, we think it's a place to be exploited. So I would say some of the seeds of this egocentric thinking are in Genesis, in Christian tradition. And then also Newtonian and a kind of rational scientific worldview where we see the natural world as inanimate, a machine, a clockwork, and it works like a machine. So we have seen the earth as inanimate, and that begins to create a worldview of human superiority. Because inanimate earth, we can do what you like. You can exploit it. It's a resource for you. But the sacred worldview, which I bring from the Hindu, Jain and Buddhist perspective, the Indian perspective, we say earth is alive. Earth is not only alive, earth is sacred living. Earth is goddess. And therefore, we have to revere Gaia. We have to revere the earth. We have to have a reverence for the earth. So that worldview cannot sit together well with the idea that earth is a dead machine and we have to just use it. Then Cartesian thinking also creates dualism and separation. René Descartes, the French philosopher, says, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So this is a kind of separational, dualistic worldview where we say that I live in my mind. This is very individualistic and ego-centered again. The Hindu worldview is soham. The other is, therefore I am. You are, therefore I am. The earth is, therefore I am. The water is, therefore I am. The sunshine is, therefore I am. The trees and birds and bees and worms and butterflies are, therefore I am. My ancestors were, therefore I am. My teachers were, therefore I am. The entire worldview is based in the web of relationships. We are living in the web of living relationships. And the whole entire earth is a web of life. So this living earth, living soil, living trees, living humans, how can human beings take life and derive life from a dead earth? If the earth is dead, how can we take dead food and be alive? We have evolved out of the earth. We have evolved out of water. We have evolved out of rocks and fungi. How can we evolve from dead matter into life? So for Hindu view, life is not just human life. Rocks have life. Rocks have spirit. That's why rocks are sacred. Mount Kailash is sacred because it is alive. And the river Ganges is sacred because river is alive. So this living quality, recognizing that, was lost in Newtonian science and physics, in Cartesian dualism, in Genesis, where we have this idea that we have dominion over the earth. So there are many, many historical routes by which we have come to this impasse now. But now there is a new awareness rising. People are recognizing that our approach to the earth and to the environment and to ecology, that we can go on exploiting it as if it was a dead machine and there was no other value than its value for human benefit. That is changing now. And the global warming and the climate change is forcing the issue to rethink about our relationship with the earth. And I think that is a very important transformation and a change in consciousness taking place at this moment. It is small, but it's beginning.
Satish warned that the science of ecology itself could also be a danger.
We have to have an ecological worldview and understand that we are part of this web of life. But sometimes in our Western materialistic and intellectual tradition, where rationalism has dominated our thinking, even ecology has become a kind of materialistic discipline. And even ecology has become a scientific, rational description of our relationship with the earth. When you are thinking in terms of earth being an abode of the divine, you are going further than a materialistic or a rationalistic worldview of ecology. What I call reverential ecology, what I would call even spiritual ecology, because ecology has two dimensions. One dimension is what I call visible dimension. We see the trees, we see the mountains, we see the river, we see the animals, we see the land, we see these things, and we can see, yes, the tree is good for me because it gives me oxygen, it gives me wood, it gives me fruit, it gives me shade. I have a relationship, therefore I can protect it. This is a visible dimension. When you have reverential ecology, you see trees, mountains, rivers, forests, not just visible dimension, but you see that all these elements have spirit. Tree spirit, mountain spirit, nature spirit, animal spirit, as much as human spirit. So when you see this invisible dimension, then you come in the realm of reverential ecology. And you say, thank you, tree. thank you for being there. As we value human beings and say, you are good as you are and who you are. In the same way, we say to the tree that you are good as you are. This intrinsic sacredness of the tree we recognize. That I call reverential ecology. And when you have a reverential ecology, then sacred places and the sacredness of the earth becomes a deeply felt realization. Not an intellectual theory, but a self-realization. Because tree is therefore you are. There's a relationship between you and the tree. So human spirit and tree spirit are in conversation.
An excellent example of this relationship between trees and people is the presence in India of thousands of sacred groves honored by local communities. I asked Satish to explain how that happened.
One very famous example of a community in India having a relationship with the sacred groves is in Rajasthan. And that community is called Bishnois. Bishnoi means 29 rules. And those rules are all related to the sacred groves. Once the king of that area ordered the trees to be cut down from that area because the king wanted to build a palace with the wood. And they hug those trees and say, you cannot destroy our sacred grove because we and the sacred grove are one. And if you kill the sacred grove, you are killing us. And so they hugged the trees. And the army was so brutal, the police was so brutal, they killed the people and destroyed their sacred grove. But new sacred groves came up and they grew and they are still there, the Bishnois. So hugging the trees in Himalayas as well, there's a big movement where if the industrial loggers come to destroy the land and the forests and the sacred groves, they will hug them. So that's a great tradition. Sacred groves are the groves where trees have been there for long, long time. It was a tradition from the time of the Buddha, and Emperor Ashoka in particular implemented this, that every family must have a sacred grove of 5 trees. 1 tree for the wood, 1 tree for the herbs, 1 tree for the fruit. These rules are written on Ashoka pillars that every family must plant 5 sacred trees and look after them. And you don't cut your own tree, which you planted. You are allowed to take a tree to build a house which your parents or ancestors planted. But you are not allowed to cut down the tree which you planted. Your responsibility is to bring it up and nurture it and care for it. So that's a family sacred grove. And then there are village sacred groves. And there you put a thread around those sacred trees to ensure that no one mistakes to cut down those trees. And then under the trees we have shrines. You put a little stone and you have this as a symbol of Shiva or Ganesh or some other deity. So sacred grove in India is symbol of human-nature relationship and human-nature bonding. We are bound together. We are one. Nature and humans are one. That's the message of sacred groves. And there are thousands of them. You will find them everywhere.
When I interviewed Satish Kumar in 2007, there was a surge of awareness, action, and political will to address the changing climate. Al Gore's award-winning film, An Inconvenient Truth, had come out in 2006, but Satish warned that global warming was not the real problem.
In last few years, humanity has suddenly woken up to the problem of global warming and climate change. Scientists, media, politicians, everybody's talking about big problem of global climate change and global warming. But global warming is a consequence of some actions, human actions. Global warming is not a problem in itself. Global warming is only a symptom of the problem. Now, as Einstein said, You cannot solve a problem by the same mindset and the same tools which created the problem in the first place. Now we have to think, what is the cause of global warming? Our economic activities, our technological advances, our globalization, our dependence on fossil fuel, and use of fossil fuel to create this kind of economic growth and technological advancement. Most of the media, most of the government leaders, business leaders, industrialists, most of the scientists, they are saying, let's find a new technology. Let's find a new source of energy. Instead of fossil fuel, let's have biofuel. Instead of fossil fuel, let's have nuclear fuel, even solar or wind power. But we will continue to have our economic growth. We'll continue to have our violence to nature. We will continue to have our technological advancement. We don't want to stop our consumerism. We don't want to stop our materialism. We just want to find a new technological fix. This is a fundamental folly of egocentric worldview. You cannot solve the problem of global warming with the same tools and mindset which has created the global warming. Global warming is a consequence, a symptom, not a problem itself. What is the problem? The problem is our attitude towards the natural world. Problem is our attitude that we own nature. We are the owners of nature. We own the land, we own the animals, we own the forest, we own the water, we own the sky. We own everything. This idea of ownership of nature is the root cause of global warming. If we seriously want to address the problem of global warming, we have to shift our paradigm. We have to shift our attitude of ownership of nature to relationship with nature. We are in relationship with nature. We are in relationship with the trees and the mountains and the rivers and the animals and the sky. The moment you change from ownership to relationship, you create a sense of the sacred. That is the key. And this is a big change. It's a change of consciousness. It's a change of mindset. It's a change from capitalism to sacred sense. This is a big change. We are so caught up in our capitalist, finance-oriented, money-making system that we think making money is more important than protecting the natural habitat. Making money is more important than protecting rainforests. Making money is more important than recognizing the rights of nature. We think human rights are all important and there are no rights for nature. We have to change that. A sense of the sacred requires that we recognize the rights of the trees to remain where they are. Rights of rivers to flow clean and pristine and undammed and unpolluted. Rights of rainforests. Rights of nature are as important as rights of humans. Just human rights without the rights of nature cannot go. If you want to really solve the problem of global warming on a long-term sustainability principle. Because Earth is a community. Human community is part of Earth community. If Earth community is destroyed and you want to just protect human community, that's a human folly. So a sense of the sacred requires to see the Earth as a primary community. And trees and animals and birds and mountains and a blade of grass and bees, all creatures, all species are members of that Earth community. This is the idea of the sacred. Earth community and the divine presence in that community. Sacred presence in that community.
Satish was a member of, but also a critic of the environmental movement. He offered insightful advice about the way environmentalists should approach their work, which reminded me of another of our big thinkers, author Barry Lopez, who pointed out in our last Sacred Land Speaks interview that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference.
At the moment, even many environmentalists are driven by fear. Fear of doom and gloom and financial disaster and end of civilization. This fear is driving a lot of environmentalists. But if you have a sense of the sacred, then you cannot be driven by the force of fear. You have to be driven by the power of love. And the power of love is love of nature, love of the earth, love of animals, love of life, love of earth community, love of human community. And when you have this power of love driving you and your lifestyle and your vision, then you create a new harmonious relationship with the earth. So I would say the long-term solution is not in fear, but in love.
Satish went on to explain where he got the idea about humans' relationship within the Earth community. And it's not just an idea, there are places where he's seen it in practice.
This was Mahatma Gandhi's idea, moving from ownership to relationship and seeing that land does not belong to us. We belong to the land. We are not the owners of the land. We are the friends of the land, like friends of the earth. So this shift is in this consciousness that land does not belong to us, we belong to the land. And therefore, now how we work with the land, it's not a question of management. Land is a self-organizing, self-managing, self-healing, self-correcting system. And we are only part of the land because we come from the land. Our bodies are made of the land. So land is greater and a bigger context than just us. So if you have that kind of idea, then you work with the land as land asks you to do. You have to listen to the land. In my experience, people living in the forest, people living in the small villages, rural areas with small piece of land, people living a simple life, they protect the land. They look after the land because this is their livelihood. So in these communities, people are taught to listen to the land. Land for them is not a source of cash crop to make more money and a financial gain. It is their livelihood. And they cannot afford to destroy the land. And if you have access to land and the natural world, then you are not so poor. People are neither poor nor rich. They are people. They are poor. This idea is brought from the sort of Western industrialized mindset. You divide the society into two groups. You are poor and you are rich. Being rich is good, being poor is bad. In traditional tribal societies, forest people, rural people in India, my mother's time, I remember there was no distinction between rich and poor. Everybody is just everybody. They are people and they live on the land and they take their livelihood and that's it. You don't have to have lots of things to be rich. You are rich because you have a rich land, rich countryside, rich trees, rich abundance of life. You have a craftsmanship, you have music, you have poetry, you have stories, you have rituals, you have celebrations. That's the richness of life. So there was no distinction between rich and poor. So it's a myth that poor people destroy the land. I think it's the rich people, educated people from industrial mindset destroy the land.
Satish described why the destruction of land has such a profound effect on the human psyche, and he called for traditional indigenous people to have self-determination and sovereignty so that they can care for their homelands and their sacred places as so many human societies always have.
People are driven to despair because their rights and their access to nature and to land has been taken away. If we keep our hands off, and the tribal community, they know how to live in harmony with the natural world. We don't. They have still skills. We view them as backward and behind, undeveloped. This is our folly, our mistake. We have to change our worldview and say we have to learn more from tribal societies. They have a more sense of the sacred than we have. They are the children of the land.
The point Satish Kumar is making, that the so-called modern world has much to learn from tribal people, reminds me again of the late Barry Lopez, who observed in our Standing on Sacred Ground film series that Indigenous people embody a truth that is not primitive or part of the past, but must be part of our future. I appreciated how both Barry and Satish encouraged us to shift our mindset, as both of them struggled to describe a new paradigm rooted in sacred land.
This sense of the sacred creates a reverence for nature. At the moment, our Western modern civilization creates this idea that human beings are somehow special. We have a kind of human ego. And we think that all the earth, the rainforests, the rivers, the mountains, the animals, the birds, all minerals, all resources are for human benefit. And therefore, they become just a material, profane, utilitarian resource. When you transform your mind and when you transform your consciousness and you change that nature is not a resource, nature is a sacred abode of God, and you are part of this web of life, then you are no longer superior. In the olden days, we used to think that one nation is superior to another nation, and we called it nationalism. We used to say one race is superior to another race, and we called it racism. One gender is superior to another gender, and we called it sexism. And we are trying now to be free of such nationalism, racism, sexism. But still humanity is suffering from this idea that human species are superior to all other species. And I call it speciesism. This is where the sacredness is lost because we become ego-centered. Now we have to transform our egocentric thinking to eco-centric thinking. Just one letter we change from G to C, from ego to eco. The moment we become ecocentric, then we recognize the intrinsic sacredness of all life. So trees have intrinsic sacredness. Birds, worms, bees, butterflies, soil, every aspect of the earth has intrinsic sacred value, irrespective of its usefulness to humans. And this is what I call sacred view of life. The moment we have that deep reverence to nature, then deep reverence to all life upon this earth, then we can celebrate.
What a great personal challenge to each of us, from G to C, from ego to eco, to embrace a reverential, spiritual ecology. I will always feel deep gratitude that Satish Kumar took the time to sit with us and break these concepts down for our film and for the world. Tune into the next episode of Sacred Land Speaks for my 2018 interview with author and publisher Malcolm Margolin, where we explore his book, The Ohlone Way, and discuss the battle to protect the West Berkeley Shell Mound. If you like what you've heard, please rate and subscribe to Sacred Land Speaks on your favorite podcast app. You can also visit sacredland.org to learn more about our films, resources, and suggested actions you can take to protect sacred places. This episode was produced and written by Callie, Shanafelt, Wong, and Toby McLeod. Our film interview with Satish Kumar was recorded by Andy Black and Dave Wendlinger, along with co-producers Jessica Abbey and Jennifer Huang. Our theme music was composed and performed by Stefan Smith and Charles Johnson. Sacred Land Speaks is brought to you by the Sacred Land Film Project of Earth Island Institute, based in the Lejeune Ohlone territory of Huichin, otherwise known as Berkeley, California. Thanks for joining us.